I just taught the F minor Haydn theme and variations. It's just such a enormously emotional trip when, after all the formal withholdings, he opens his sorrow in his heart. It was 2 years after Mozart died in 1793. It was about a very dear friend, lady friend of his who died. And it's mournful, yes, but it has the major variations, not only in minor, which is the sadness. And then you have the moment where it goes stratospheric. He doesn't care anymore at the end about the formal withholding of the feelings, expression. And fa 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 mi 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 re re re. Sorry for the birds. I'm competing, but I don't have your voice. So the fact is that it comes at the end like say the repeated note is the symbol of death already with Bach's cantata number 8 with the flute playing the recall of the death toll of the bell announcing who died, and Mozart Quartet 421 la re do re fa mi re do re mi la 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 la. This ostinato, its repeated note, is emotional intent, is withheld sorrow. And Haydn, who is so formal, since he writes symphonies and all kinds of divertimenti for the Esterházys, you could think he's an industrial composer at a time when, of course, everything was handmade, but in such quantities, and that he wouldn't put much of his soul in it. It will be just all formal, and it is. And then inside you go to the peel and unpeel until you get to the heart of the fruit. And then you feel how he expresses, unleashes that emotional moment. It gives me goosebumps every time I hear it. And working on it has something more to it than just playing it, because by teaching it you have to speak about it. Putting words on things that can be told, it's even more emotionally strong, I find, because you realize how much more art form can say about our angst, hopes, and acceptation of our, in fact, finitude. We all will end. And there is something about the parting at the ending that is the most meaningful, I think, to part. And that when you're so in tune with some human beings, you don't want to part. You have to, because you have no choice. Then you have to make a sense of it, and then you start making a meaningful sense of it. After all, that's what it is. We cannot do anything else. We are only mortals. That is a philosophical fact, but in reality, we leave something of us as if this ephemeral perfume of passing by on earth has to be captured in a bottle. Would it be a painting? Would it be a poetry, a theater play? I don't think it's about oversized egos. It could be a bit arrogant to pretend I'm going to leave something to be immortal in the thoughts of others. Perhaps that's not the point. Perhaps it is the point. My poor birds are overwhelmed by the endless tractors of my many neighbors who spend their life cutting their grass. Sometimes when they end doing this ostinato, but by engine, it's nothing related to the spiritual ostinato announcing death in the 18th century, the birds do their own ostinatos, and it's very touching. Now you can hear some in between. Anyway, I had to share this with you because I find that so much of it is moving, literally so, that is captured in few pages and then unleashes itself into your soul in an identification with it. Isn't that so dramatic, like in the K475 Mozart Fantasy, the sense of letting go, loose the emotion. Haydn does that so beautifully, so emotionally. Oh. And then, of course, you can compare to the opening in F minor of Schubert's Four-Hand Fantasy. With a repeated notes of the insistence of this morning emotional feeling in the Haydn fantasy. The repeated note is the element that symbolizes death in Baroque. Bach writes this cantata, number 8, with a very, very beautiful Siciliana choir. Very solace-like, giving us hope after all. And it's called Dear Jesus, When Will I Die? Liebster Gott, wann werd ich sterben? And on the top, he places the flute, repeating notes which are there to be this ostinato about death. So in E major, luminous E major. Mozart in his 421 string quartet. Going major, minor in the repeated note. Incredibly intense, in fact, in its expression of sorrowful. And in the left hand, he does moving accompaniment, harmonic arpeggiation of triads, but the bass line is with low stem, singing the line like the continuo in the Baroque, so that the melody is the result of the singing bass line, and not a melodized top that necessitates a harmonization like in the fourth ballade in the same F minor. Haydn is really a few years from Bach only, and of course when we play it on the modern piano, homogenizing the resonances, we hear the triads with thirds in the left hand. But when you read the score, you hear it's the bass line is a melodic line in parallel with the melodic line on top. Much more than the harmonic line in the left hand is a melodic line of the bass, and inside you have the moving parts of the eighth notes. So hear the difference. So layered compared to be honest, I think is beautiful. It's terrible to say, to accept, to confess. So is it music for the ears, music for the eyes? Correcting by the eyes, your ears hear the layered two parts left hand accompaniment. And if not, in the verticalization of putting together the two hands. We hear thirds, and not a line with arpeggiated thirds. So where is the truth? Is it the expression? Is it the intent? Is it the notation with the upper and lower stems? Or is it all blending in a harmonic progression where the sound of the modern piano being homogenized with the cross strings? We have a chordal progression instead of a melodic one with arpeggios. And on top the melody. No superiority on the analysis over the emotion of the heard, of the oral transmission almost of the piece. After all, the amalgamation of the two elements are perhaps meant by the composer, who bunches them together, is not? Now, each of the parts has its own octave, because it's impossibly, I can't even find the word, stretched and unpractical to play tenths rather than thirds in the left hand. So do you hear layered, combined, a little of both, or perhaps with the pedal and the length of sound on the modern piano, we have to blend the arpeggiated chords? I don't have the truth about it. I know what is written, I know what is heard, I know there is a filter in between. It's fascinating though. It proves that even centuries after it's written, it gives us so much to think, to feel, to express, to experiment, to combine, to layer, to stimulate, to direct in the storytelling, the lines arching. Such an incredibly beautiful, meaningful, emotional, driven, expressive, true sense of mournful lament in these variations in F minor, reminiscent to me of the Rondo in A minor by Mozart, and how much Haydn and Mozart had in common in terms of the aesthetic, stylistic feelings, and how deeply emotional the composition can be, and the repeated notes and the chromatic notes. This is just unbelievably beautiful, and with very simple means.